Have you ever wondered why Italy, a major Axis power, seemed to perform so poorly in World War II? It's a fascinating story of ambition, overconfidence, and a nation completely unprepared for the conflict it was dragged into. Let's dive deep into why Italy's war effort ultimately collapsed. In 1940, Benito Mussolini watched from the sidelines as Hitler's Germany steamrolled through France. He saw what he thought was a golden opportunity. The war seemed almost over, and he wanted a seat at the victor's table to claim his share of the spoils. Mussolini dreamed of a new Roman Empire, a Mare Nostrum or our sea, controlling the entire Mediterranean. But there was a massive gap between this grand vision and Italy's reality. The Italian military was, to put it mildly, not ready for a modern war. Their equipment was shockingly outdated. While German panzers were revolutionizing warfare, many Italian armored divisions were still equipped with light tanks like the L-335, which was basically a machine gun-armed metal box that was already obsolete by the Spanish Civil War. Their standard infantry rifle, the Carcano, was a World War I-era design. Even their air force, the Regia Aeronautica, which had some decent planes, was plagued by a lack of modern technology like radar and effective radio communication. But the problems went far deeper than just old gear. Industrial capacity was a huge issue. Italy simply didn't have the resources or the industrial base of Germany, Britain, or the United States. It lacked crucial raw materials like coal, iron ore, and oil. In fact, Italy had to import almost all of its oil, making its war machine incredibly vulnerable to blockades. This shortage meant that training was limited, vehicles couldn't move, and factories couldn't produce enough weapons, ammunition, or spare parts. Leadership was another critical failure. Mussolini, while a charismatic speaker, was a disastrous military strategist. He often made decisions based on political prestige rather than sound military advice, frequently overruling his generals. The command structure itself was a mess, with fierce rivalries between the army, navy, and air force. They rarely coordinated their efforts effectively, leading to disjointed and often disastrous operations. For example, the Italian Navy, despite having a powerful fleet of modern battleships, was hesitant to engage the British Royal Navy aggressively, partly due to a crippling fear of losing their ships and a lack of fuel. The Italian soldier often gets a bad rap, but the blame shouldn't fall on them. They were often poorly supplied, poorly led, and thrown into battles they had no chance of winning. Their morale was understandably low from the very beginning. Unlike the ideological fervor seen in Germany, many ordinary Italians didn't feel a deep commitment to the war. They were fighting for Mussolini's imperial dreams, not for the defense of their homeland. So, with this unprepared military, what happened when Italy actually went to war? The results were almost immediate and catastrophic. In October 1940, Mussolini launched an invasion of Greece, expecting a quick victory to prove Italy's strength independently of Germany. He didn't even tell Hitler beforehand. The invasion was a complete fiasco. The small but determined Greek army, fighting in their home mountains during a harsh winter, not only stopped the Italians but pushed them back into Albania. It was a national humiliation that forced Germany to intervene, delaying their planned invasion of the Soviet Union to clean up the mess in the Balkans. It was a similar story in North Africa. In September 1940, Italian forces invaded British-held Egypt from their colony in Libya. They outnumbered the British defenders significantly, but their advance quickly stalled. Then, in December, the British launched a counteroffensive, Operation Compass. A much smaller, but better equipped and better led, Commonwealth force completely shattered the Italian 10th Army. In just 2 months, they captured over 130,000 Italian prisoners and advanced hundreds of miles. Once again, Germany had to step in, sending a small but elite force, the Afrika Korps, led by Erwin Rommel, to save the situation. From that point on, the Germans largely called the shots in the North African campaign. Throughout the war, this pattern repeated itself. Italy would launch an offensive, get into trouble, and Germany would have to divert precious resources and troops to bail them out. Hitler grew increasingly frustrated with his junior partner. He saw Italy less as an asset and more as a liability that was draining German strength. The alliance, which was supposed to be a pact of steel, looked more like a pact of German steel holding up a crumbling Italian structure. By 1943, the situation inside Italy had reached a breaking point. The war was a disaster on every front. Allied bombers were pounding Italian cities into rubble. The economy had collapsed, leading to severe food shortages and starvation in urban areas. The endless string of defeats had completely destroyed what little morale was left. The Italian people were done with the war and with the fascist regime that had led them into it. This internal collapse came to a head in July 1943. After the Allies successfully invaded Sicily, the fascist Grand Council, Mussolini's own ruling body, turned against him. They voted to remove him from power. The very next day, King Victor Emmanuel III had Mussolini arrested and appointed Marshal Pietro Badoglio as the new prime minister. The new government immediately began secret negotiations with the Allies. On September 8, 1943, Italy officially surrendered, switching sides in the war. But this didn't end the fighting in Italy. In response to the surrender, Germany swiftly invaded and occupied the northern and central parts of the country. They rescued Mussolini from his prison and set him up as the puppet leader of a new state, the Italian Social Republic. What followed was a brutal 2-year civil war, with Italians fighting against Germans and their fellow fascist countrymen, while the Allies slowly fought their way up the Italian peninsula. So, to say Italy was useless is a simplification, but it captures the essence of a nation pushed into a conflict it was fundamentally unprepared to fight. It was a tragedy of misplaced ambition, inadequate industry, poor leadership, and ultimately, a population that had no heart for the fight. The dream of a new Roman Empire ended not in glory, but in civil war, foreign occupation, and national ruin. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like me to cover. See you next time.